You have probably experienced walking into a room and wondering, why am I here? And I don't mean that in an existential sense. I mean, what were you planning to do in this room? What was so important that you had to leave the other room to walk into this one? And you might think the fact that you can't remember might be a sign of some kind of cognitive deficit. Maybe early signs of Alzheimer's, or maybe mom was right and it is that phone. Well, some good news is that none of those are true. In fact, this is a very normal and very common experience, and this phenomenon is known as the doorway effect. But now that we know the name for this experience, what can we do about it? Well, the doorway effect can be explained by something called the event segmentation theory, which proposes that we use event models to make predictions about our current situation. And this event model is based on our perception and our understanding of the situation we are in. So let's take walking into a kitchen, for example. If you walk into a room that you understand to be a kitchen, you would reasonably predict that there would be food, cupboards, maybe a stove, so that when you actually walk into that room, your event model can make the correct predictions of food, cupboards, and a stove. But if you were to step out of a kitchen and walk into another room, let's say the washroom, important situation features change. For example, your location, the objects in the room, or what you're planning to do in that room. I hope it's different from what you're planning to do in the kitchen. And so your event model starts to make predictive errors, and you're unable to predict what is going on in a situation. In this case, we need to rebuild our event model by taking in more information about the situation so we can create an accurate event model that makes the correct predictions about our situation. So, in essence, your event model for a kitchen helps you make the correct predictions for a kitchen. But when you walk through a doorway and walk into the washroom, all of a sudden your event models start to make more errors and you become less accurate in your predictions. When this happens, you need to take in more information about the situation, so being in a washroom, so you can make a new event model. And when the new event model is updated, this is experienced as an event boundary. Event boundaries separate meaningful units of activity. When you have an event boundary, or when your event model is updated, this also erases the old model, so you're no longer to predict the old situation. And this is how doorways cause forgetting. So, based on these explanations, you probably think that the doorway effect is not just applicable to doorways. And you'd be correct. The doorway effect can be found anywhere, such as when someone rings on your doorbell, if your laptop dies and you need to recharge its battery, or if you're opening a new email. In all of these situations, it's very common to forget what you're doing, even when you're not physically changing locations. And this could be because we're all using resources from something called short-term memory. So short-term memory, like the name suggests, is the part of the memory that holds information for a short amount of time. And not only is this information held temporarily, but there's also a limit for the amount of information we can store. And so when this happens, we have to be a little bit selective on what we can keep in our heads. And that is where event boundaries come in. Event boundaries help us keep relevant information on hand. We need to update our old event models, so information that is no longer relevant to us, with new event models that can make accurate predictions about our current situation. So the next time you walk through a doorway and forget what you're doing, even though it's frustrating, hopefully you remember that this small error, the doorway effect, is the cost of the larger processes of short-term memory that help you segment daily life. Thank you for listening to my presentation.